Roots to Wellbeing uses the 5 ways to wellbeing to support your mental health. Connect, take notice, keep learning, be active and give. Thanks for watching.
Hello, Tina.
Hello, Tara. How great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, pleasure, and thank you for coming. So thank you for bearing with. So we just tried to do a little bit of a Facebook Live. For those of you that tried to watch earlier, I couldn't quite work it out, but hey, we're here. So it turns out, Tina, I met recently, but I actually knew you 20-something years ago, which is mad.
Oh, you know, life is just balmy. It really is. My beautiful grandma, my nana, Sadie, happened to be at a day centre that you, Tara, were at. And and again, it's really weird because I used to go every Wednesday with my little girl, Chloe, was 3. And I remember actually, I used to take the little boy that I looked after, Dean, on a Wednesday because that was my day off. And my highlight of my week was singing and dancing with the elderly. And I remembered you when I first saw you a few weeks ago. I thought, I know this girl. How do I know her? And I knew you, 25 years ago? No,
Yeah.
not 25, 20.
No, it was about that.
23.
Yeah, my daughter's 21. I wasn't
23.
pregnant with Rhiannon then, so yeah, it would have been in the 90s.
Wow, it's mad. But I'm
yeah.
really good with a face. I forget names, constantly forget names, but I know a face. And I would never have forgotten you because you had such a wonderful, you gave me such a lovely feeling when I used to go to that day centre. You know, you were there and it was like, hi, and how are you? And your energy was just so vibrant and so beautiful. And it just, the whole experience was just absolutely wonderful. I wish every care home and day centre had a Tara, really.
Oh, bless you. I mean, I loved it. I mean, I've talked quite a bit about self-care, but also caring for others. And I think at this time, a lot of us that are more hands-on, more tactile, we're kind of missing that. And the video I've just put up today is my dad's one, and that's been quite hard. It was hard to look
I can
at.
imagine.
Yeah, like, I mean, he talks about how he's managing at a time of shielding, because there's a lot of people and it's not an age-related thing either, is it? There's people that are shield at the moment because of medical conditions, where they've been quite active and they're maybe taken for granted, like how they
it's really difficult. I mean, I do a lot of work with the elderly, and I do support Redbury Support Services, and I'm a carer myself for my mum. But you know, I've noticed with a lot of the elderly, they're falling apart because they can't do their voluntary work that they were doing because they can't go out, and now they're suffering with mental health. And before, they were sort of, I suppose, not dealing with their issues because, you know, if you've got mental health, a really good way and a good tool is to actually do stuff for others. And when you're really busy doing everything for everybody else, you don't then think about yourself, because that's the hard part.
Yeah.
So there's an awful lot of people, and especially in the Jewish community too, where there's an awful lot of, you know, hidden emotions and lots of upsets and raw upsets because of history of their parents and grandparents and so on and so forth because of the war.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, I'm in a very fortunate position in the sense that I care for my mum, and I've got a carer that works with her in the morning, and she does the night time. So my mum keeps her dignity as such, and I do the lunch call. So I have the easy bit, but I go out every day to do the lunch call, and I'm loving doing it. You know, I'm really enjoying to do it, and, you know, making her day by lifting her spirits. But like you, Tara, my mum's had mental health, got diagnosed with bipolar some years ago, and the journey's been really tough because it was taboo. Nobody spoke about mental health. It was hidden under the carpet. And it was very clear as a child that my mum wasn't right because she was always in bed. Always in bed is what I remember her. Or if she wasn't in bed, she was really busy doing everything in the community. There wasn't a middle ground with her. But my dad is really extrovert, and my dad was a sportsman, and he was a very successful corporate bank manager, and he would deal with things by running, and he would run away and play sport or do other stuff that he did, so he didn't have to deal with his own mental health. And he's had quite a really tough time lately because he lives in Manchester. But his mother took her life before I was born, actually, just after my sister Debbie was born. So my dad knew that my mother had something not quite right, but he couldn't deal with it because it was too raw for him because of what had happened to him and his experiences. But, you know, many years later, you know, my mum had another mental breakdown and threw my father out. He came and lived with me, and we tried to get her help, and there was nothing available, you know, because she would not admit that there was something wrong with her. And, you know, we spent many years trying to get the right help, but if she doesn't want to get the help and doesn't think there's a problem, there's not a lot one can do.
It is difficult. I mean, my mum, anytime so my mum's very similar journeys. My mum has bipolar. Back then it used to be called Manic Depression, and at the time she's a nurse. So there's a little bit around acceptance, acknowledgement. I think a thing to realise with when mental health is changing, it's like even me, like the past 2 weeks we've been getting these videos up, so it's affected my sleep pattern. I'm not used to so much electronic stuff, and I could feel that I mean, I've got like a bit of a care plan kind of thing in place. It's my own interpretation of it, because I've had a couple of psychosis myself. So I know when I'm feeling a bit frayed, I'm not sleeping enough, and I can feel my mind is racing, that's a sign for me. But my mum, bless her, she was quite proud, and coming from that generation, I'm born in the 70s, mum, they didn't talk about it so much then, did they? It was very much a stigma.
And the fact that she was a nurse, you know, there she was in the caring profession, so it was like a taboo subject. I mean, I also had to seriously look at my own mental health. I mean, I went into a management role when I was in my early 20s, and part of that management role was to analyse. And I started to analyse me, but I analysed myself so much that I ended up with a mental breakdown. So that was in my early 20s. And I remember Mum saying to me, oh my God, people don't normally self-analyse until they're at least in their 40s or 50s. Really? Wow. And I thought, how odd, what a weird thing to say. But I've always not wanted to be like her, because she doesn't have any friends. She really is a manic depressive. She's a real loner, and I'm more like my father in my energy. And my dad used to say to me when I was little, he'd say, you're just like your grandma. Now, of course, she'd passed away. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, if I'm just like my grandma, I must be nuts like her. And now if someone says I'm nuts, I go, you're right, I am. And that's fine, because I'm proud of who I am. And I am nuts. I've got a higher energy, but that's me. But I've had to do a lot of work on me. Yeah.
And then we're all individuals, and that's what we're getting at with this series. We're all different. And I suppose all of my life I had a fear of being like my mum, in the sense that the difficult journeys when she went into hospital, every single time my mum went into hospital, she was sectioned under the Mental Health Act, i.e. taken away in a straitjacket.
How many times sectioned, Nora? How many times was she sectioned?
Oh, loads. I remember probably 3 or 4, maybe more. I don't. It was quite dramatic when it happened.
Yes.
Quite a dramatic thing. And when you remember it, like being like that, and I suppose my fear was that happening. But when I had that first psychosis in 2016, long story, but when that happened, I suppose what I realised was, I've had this thing happen, and probably I do have bipolar. It's not been officially diagnosed.
But it doesn't matter, does it?
Probably I have this tendency of ups and downs, and it's a label. It's just, you know, from a functional perspective, it manifests in feeling low, sometimes feeling lethargic, or whatever you want to call it, and then sometimes when I'm busy on a project, I might feel a little bit like more like I have been the last few days, trying to get things together. But
and Tara, it's so true.
Yeah, and the biggest thing is knowing it's okay to not be okay, and actually being able to say it's okay. Like, for instance, some people hear voices. You know, when my mum has been very unwell and not taking her medication, we went to Turkey, and she didn't take her medication, and she was having visual and auditory hallucinations. You could tell by what she was doing. Now, for me as a caregiver, I suppose working in mental health, becoming an occupational therapist, working in mental health, I was able to use the right language. Because when you're in it, when your emotions are in it, it's, oh, they're mad. Like, no, my mum's mad, my mum's doing that person in your family, you're like, how do I explain what is going on? And when you're in it, and I think the other thing to say to anyone watching this is, if you are that parent and you have been feeling low and you have been feeling helpless and you have been feeling hopeless, we are children, we're both children of people where this has happened, and we've both used this to create our own lives and to support others. So please, I get a lot of people, they say they feel really guilty that they're not feeling 100% of the time as a parent, as a caregiver.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, and it's okay.
No,
it's
not
okay.
at all. What I wanted to say, Tara, is also I had to look at my own mental health, and I took myself to my doctors and said, I believe I have bipolar, like my mum. And my doctor looked at me and he said, no, you don't. And I said to him, look, I do not want my two children, who are adults in their 20s, to go through any of the experiences that I have. Okay, so I am telling you now that I would like you to send me to the psychiatrist so I can have a chat and just talk to the psychiatrist about what I believe. So he didn't have a choice and said, okay. So I am on medication for bipolar, for the simple fact that I've had a couple of, what can I say? I had a mental breakdown when I was in my 20s. I then ended up running a household and raising two children, and I was under extreme stress. But I think the nightmares of my childhood and the experiences that have happened to me affected the way I thought. You know, because I constantly kept saying to myself, look, you know, obviously I must be like my mum, or I must be like her, or and then of course when you feed that information you feel unwell. So I'm on a very low dose, but I also recognize that, you know, I am eccentric. That is who I am as a person. But I also have gone through a stage where I've not wanted to be here, because if I can't do the work that I've been put on this planet to do, which is to help others, okay, and do my coaching and my Reiki and my NLP and my hypnotherapy, I'd rather not be here. So I've cracked the egg as such, and I've peeled back that onion so deep down that I am proud of who I am, and that makes me equipped to talk about mental health and to deal with people that have gone through this stuff, because nobody needs to be ashamed. And if you are suffering with mental health out there, don't put a stigmatism on it. Okay, it's okay. Be honest with yourself. But that was my problem. I could not cope with the fact that I was putting a label on me. And it is a label. You know, we've got people that are, you know, on the autism spectrum, people that are, you know, bipolar. You've got loads of different mental health.
I think that the term now is like neurologically diverse. We're all neurologically diverse, though. It could be that you have my friend's son can't go in a room with a velvet sofa or velvet curtains because he just can't bear the thought of velvet. It could be that I don't like the taste of licorice. My planning and motor coordination, I'm a bit dyspraxic. I can't look at white paper for too long. It gives me a headache. I might need yellow. You know, there's lots of
indeed.
It doesn't. I suppose in society you think like these labels come about, and sometimes labels. I mean, there's a lot of people that are labelled with different conditions like personality disorders, etc., etc. And it's
exactly.
It's an interpretation of an interaction, really, an interplay between a person and their environment. But I suppose the thing here to say today is just that it's okay, and it's okay to own up to something that I am aware. I got to Sunday, been 2 weeks doing these videos and pulling things together and talking to people and spending a lot of screen time. And I was aware that I wasn't sleeping properly. So I called out to a lot of my friends who do healing and friends that did some tech, and they sent me some distant Reiki, and I, you know, turned everything off. I, you know, chamomile teas, you know, trying to do what I
Lovely.
My personal care plan, and I use things to help my sleep. I use oils and things like that, and I know what works for me. And I've got this little personal care plan because I've been unwell before, and I know medications, for instance, that might have given me an intolerance.
No, I agree, Tara. And quite frankly, if I could have just gone down the health and well-being, using my datura oils, doing my Reiki and other things, then I would have been happy to have done that. But I had a husband that was getting really pissed off, and I thought, you know what, he'll end up walking out and leaving me if I don't do something about it. But I must say, what really affected me the most with every single thing was the fact that when Mum had her first mental breakdown and ended up, well, it wasn't actually, it was probably a third or fourth, but she was sectioned, the build up to that was horrific, and I was pregnant. And when my daughter was born, Chloe, who's 25 now, she came out of my womb really highly stressed because I was so stressed. And that affected my baby because of the stress, the huge amount of stress that I was under, having to cope with this parent that was doing all these outrageous, peculiar things. Now, Chloe is lovely, she's fine, she's balanced, she's got an amazing job. I've got a home at the moment because of coronavirus, and I've got a wonderful relationship with her. But she suffered. She had candida as a little girl. She used to black out. She used to come home from school and say to me, I don't like that girl, she's a duck. And I'd look at her and I go, what are you talking about? You don't have ducks at school. And she'd say, but you don't understand, Mummy, she is. She just didn't like this kid. And she'd say to me, can't you be a normal mum and pick me up from school? Well, I was doing what I could. I was working in recruitment and I was in management, and yeah, I'd have loved to have been there to pick her up from school, but I was a single parent by then. And I blamed myself for that for many, 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 many years, but realised that actually I had to let go of that. None of it's my fault. And Chloe's okay.
And we do that. We do the guilt and the shame and the blame. And my mum was the same. My mum worked shifts as a nurse, and my nan, we stayed at my nan's, and my nan picked us up. And I suppose back then in the 70s and the 80s, there wasn't so many mums. Nowadays it's more prevalent mums working. And and I've, looking back, I really feel for my mum, because there she was. She gave her life to the NHS. She wanted to be a nurse. She's not very academic. And then she got to her 40s and she'd had so many breakdowns that they said, no, go. And then she spent sort of 20 years. I mean, she's still with us, Mum, and she's quite creative, very creative. So, and a lot of us are creative, and we are eccentric, but that makes us who we are. And I think these series of videos, there's a lot of people coming on that are creatives, that are sharing their creativity, and that's great. Like some of us are seen as I'm what you call an extrovert introvert. People might think I talk a lot, but actually the real me is quite quiet. Like, I don't really like all this publicity stuff. I just get on and do what I'm doing. So I find that quite hard. I feel it in my stomach, I really do. But hopefully throughout what we're doing here, we can share, we can support, we can nurture others, and just let you guys know it's okay.
I think, Tara, us having this conversation, if I was suffering with mental health and I was out there watching this, I think I would feel actually quite pleased that us guys have been as honest, and that it might be that if you are suffering, please be honest with yourselves, okay? And you can always message Tara or myself. Yes,
we're going to leave some details for you below here, and I mean, obviously there are other telephone lines, etc., that are useful, but I think sometimes it is, I mean, for me, I'm putting, like I say, my care plan now, there's a lot of my friends that are on there that know me. So if I get poorly, because I've had 3 psychosis now, I know who my husband can call, because
of course,
great emotionally. He's not great emotionally. My daughter, obviously, she's seen me be unwell a couple of times, and that's hard for her. So I've got like a list of people, including,
which is amazing. And what I do, my checklist for me is I sleep really well. I have my walk, I do my yoga, I do Pilates, I manage to, I get the dog out, and I put me first now. I am the most important person. So instead of putting everybody else first before me, actually, I'm number 1.
100%.
And if I'm okay, everyone else is fine.
100%.
So, I think that's a big message. Be kind to yourself. It's okay to put yourself first. It's not selfish to do that.
Yeah, and that is the message from Mental Health Awareness Week this year, 2020, 18th to the 24th of May 2020, is kindness. You can't presume you know what the other person's thinking, how they're feeling. You know, at the moment there are quite big divides in society in terms of opinions of things that are happening at the moment, and we don't have to, and sometimes fear takes us down that road, and the unknown in mental health terms, the unknown is, you know, up until, no wonder myself and Tina have had these experiences in our lives and these doubts, because up until Victorian times, if you had a family member with a mental health illness who was in the hospital, you potentially would go in there as well. It was seen as a hereditary thing. Everyone was the same kind of thing. And, you know, we're all individuals, we're all unique, and we all have a story to tell.
No, absolutely lovely. So I think really and truly what I've learned more than anything is self-love.
Oh.
There's my little crystal. There's my self-love crystal.
Love it,
because when we self-love, we're fine. We've got to love ourselves, because love, we know, is the highest energy, the highest vibration. And when we can really love ourselves completely with our mental health and everything about us, then we're all right. So big crystal to all of you watching. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Namaste. Thank you.
If you feel inspired and want to learn ways to support your mental health, please subscribe to our channel. Or you can find us at www.rootstowellbeing.org. And if you would like to get involved in future videos, please contact hello@rootstowellbeing.org. Thank you.